In this tutorial, we're going to walk you through just the process of designing a page. So we're going to start with a blank page and start with dragging in guidelines to help us organize and design the page. Now, the first thing I want to think about is what I'm going to put on there. So I'm planning to put a title, 3 frames for pictures, and 3 text boxes to go with that. So I'm just going to think through what my pictures are. I've already taken a look at them, and they're all landscape. So what I need to then do is plan out a page that will fit landscape pictures. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a title along the side, and I'll go out to about, let's go with 10 and 11. Well, maybe let's go with 11 and 12. So I've got my one pica apart, and I'll plan to put in a text box in there later. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some picture frames. And so what I have is my rulers over here, and it starts at 3 and it ends at 48. So that's 45 picas that I have space to play with. So if I divide that by 3, it ends up being a very skinny height, very minimal height. So I'm going to overlap them to some degree. So what I'm going to then do is drag down. I'm going to go down from 3 to, I'm going to just eyeball it. Maybe I'll go to about 21. So I'll do 20.6. And then I'll drag a second one down and I'll do 21.6. That is approximately 21 minus 3, 18. So I'm just going to go 48 up to 30, and that will give me 18 as well. So I'm just kind of going to eyeball it for now. So I'll go 29.6, kind of split the difference, and 30.6. It's a little finicky, so I'll just do that. And then I'm going to make my text boxes fairly small. I'm going to just eyeball it, and I'm going to change it later. I can adjust as I'm doing this. So a landscape picture is something like that. So I'll go to 41, drag another one in, and since my guidelines are always going to come in pairs, so I have a little bit of space between everything, I'll go to 42. So I have one pica apart for all these pictures here. But really I can only fit 2 frames in of any decent size, and so I'm going to have to use more guidelines. But what I'm going to do is put in a frame here. It didn't take, so click and drag. Now the nice thing about InDesign is I can automatically create the exact same frame or text box or shape just by clicking again. Right after I've drawn, this window comes up. I click OK, and it will insert in a frame. Now these two are exactly the same size because I did the math ahead of time. So that's a pretty good outcome. Now I'm just going to put a frame on there for now. Same on this one. I'm going to play around with that later, but just so I can kind of see what's going on. Now what I've done is I've limited myself to quite a small frame here. So I'm going to have to rethink this. That happens all the time. So I want a picture frame about the same size. Because I've made them fairly wide, fairly tall, I don't have a lot of space left here for a picture. So what I'm going to do is go back to my picture frame, click again, create one, and I'm just going to place it here. And I'll just eyeball it for now, but I'll try and split the difference. So what I'm now going to do is try and resize these so everything fits. So I'm going to drag this in a little bit. So let's be exact. I'll go to, let's go to 24. Now width and height 24.36. I'm going to go down to 24. I can change the width of my box there. I'm just going to use my arrow keys. You can use the arrow keys to move things around. So I'm just going to do that. And then I'm going to resize these to match. So I'll adjust it perfectly a little bit later on. I'm just going to go there. Now you see that little line up here? It's really faint, but it basically tells me that these two are now the exact same size. So what I'm going to do is drag actually I'll just do that, use the existing ones. I'm going to take these two and I'm just going to use my arrow keys and move them over till they line up perfectly with that text box. Then I'll just readjust this one to fit. Put a frame on it so I can see it just a little bit better. And now I've got 3 picture frames. There's some overlap there. And it was a fairly easy, quick and easy adjustment that I got to make there. Now all I have to do is put in my text boxes. I've already got my spacing there. So I'm just going to drag my text box and place it there. I missed by a little bit here. I'll put a frame on that so I can see it. And then I'm going to put one there and there as well. But I'm going to use my guidelines. So I'll drag that down. And again, I can fine tune this. So that one is 16.75. Doesn't really matter, but I'm going to go down to 16.6 and then 15.6. Just readjust this one a little bit to match. So I went from 3 to, which is here, do a little bit more math, 15.6, so that's 12.6. So I'm going to try and match the same down here in the bottom. So I'm going to drag a guideline down, that's 48. So I'm going to go up 12, so 38, 37, 36, and then a half. So I'll go there. So I was at 35.6, so this one will end up being, 34.6. Remember, I'm always having these lines 1 pike apart, and so there I have 2 of the same size text boxes there. Now I can double check just by dragging, putting in my text box. Put a frame on. Well, let's just make this perfect first. So I missed just by a little bit, so I'll make sure it lines up perfectly with all my guidelines. I'm going to put a frame on, or a border around it, sorry. And then what I can do with my black arrow is hold the Alt button down and then just drag this down, and what it does is it makes an exact copy. So that fits in there fairly well. I'm off just by a little bit. So they are exactly the same size. So now I have picture, text box, picture, picture, text box. These two are the same size. These 2 text boxes are the same size. This one is obviously different, but that's okay. A little variety. And then this picture, I'm guessing it's very close to these 2, if not the same size. I didn't actually measure it, but as long as it's centered, I'm fine with that. Doesn't have to be always the same size. Now the only thing left I have to do is put in a text box here, but it works a little differently when I put text in. So let's just take a quick look here. I'm going to turn off. That's what my page is going to look like. It's a little boring. It's a little just one colored. So I can use some color to match things up. So if I want to, what I can do is select these 2 by clicking and dragging with my black arrow. And I'm going to go to my border color. I'm going to pick a more interesting color. So I'm going to use those as blue. These 2 here, I'm going to change to, let's go with a green. And then these 2 down here, let's maybe go with a red. Maybe a little bit lighter. So now I've got a little bit of color. And when I go to my preview, these two are obviously connected by blue, by green, and by red. And that can show a relationship between the picture and what I'm talking about in my text box. Now this last one, it's a little trickier because I want my title to go up the side. So what I'm going to do first is create my text box. I'll just make it whatever shape I want. I'm going to choose my font. So I'll just go to the one I had up here, something kind of fun. And I'll go to my size. I can change that later. And I'm going to put in a depth cropping. And let's see, what else was I going to do here? Make sure I got it right. So depth, framing. So I got them mixed up a little bit. So I'm doing this page here. So depth, framing, cropping. Now I've run out of space, so I have to decrease the size of my font. I'll just triple click and we'll just decrease it until you can see everything. I'm going to center it, and let's go here. I'm going to, these three buttons here allow me to put it in the bottom, middle, or the top. So I'll put it down here in the middle. It's going to resize, maybe I'll leave that as is. Maybe I'll put it at the top, and what I'm going to do is put a drop shadow on it so it kind of fills in that space there. And I'll put a frame in it, or a border. Keep calling it a frame, same similar thing. Choose my color. Let's see what I've been, be really creative here. Let's go with, sure, yellow. And then what I'm going to do actually is rotate it. So I've got a few different options here. I've got this control here. This is called the angle. And what it allows me to do is rotate that to 90 degrees, 180 degrees. So if I go 90 degrees, it spins it on its side. Then I can move it over here. See if it fits in. It's a little bit large. So what I'm going to have to do is, again, shrink this down so it fits nicely in, at least in terms of the text. And then I'll resize this to fit in to the frame. So that's how you get your title at an angle. And I'll just match it to all these guidelines. It's a little tedious, but let's go with that. So now I'm going to put this in the middle. Looks a little bit better. And maybe I'll put in background color. And I want to put some more thought into a different color there. So that's one way that you can accomplish designing your page. Now all that's left to do is, of course, put in the content. So I would go File, click on the frame here, go File, Place. And I'm going to do my depth picture first. So I'll go find one of those pictures. So I'm going to use this one. Click on it with my white arrow. Let's put it, drag it up to the middle. Sometimes that's easier first. You can see it already shrank it down to 25%. So what I'm going to do is shrink that down so it just fits in the frame. Up a little bit more. There's my depth picture. Then in here, in my text box, I would type depth picture and then my explanation. And of course I can change my font size as well there. So maybe I'll make that a little bit bigger. So that's basically how you would design a page. Obviously I would fill more of these in with pictures, with text, and I would be done. Actually the last thing I'll do, just to show you quickly, in your text box, you have, if you go to the text tool, under paragraph, you have this here. You see how the text is kind of right up against the edge of the box? So what you can do is you can actually push it over a little bit, and using this tool right here, which is kind of like an indent, but it pushes everything over from that side, so it's a little easier to read. It's kind of like a padding the cell. Okay. Now, one other thing I want to do is just make sure everything lines up. So far it looks pretty good, just except up here. These two line up, but this one is a little bit off. And so I'm just going to readjust that to match. And then I'm going to kind of tie everything together. So far it looks pretty good, I would say, but I'm going to make a couple changes here. This drop shadow kind of throws off a little bit. So what I'm going to do is, instead of putting a drop shadow on the box, I'm just going to go up here to my text, put a drop shadow on the text so it has a little bit more content to it. And then what I'm going to do is go to my corner options. So these corner options allow me to, I'm going to turn the preview on so I'll make sure I see it. So there's a corner option there. Now it's tilted. So this one is actually this bottom corner here, which is actually top left, but because I've rotated it, it's not. So I'm going to change this one as well. I'm going to go up here to corner options, and I'm just going to change this top one. And then go up to corner options and change this bottom right one. So it just kind of creates that whole one big box feel to it, because I've got all four corners with a curved was it concave curved corner. It just ties everything together nicely. Right, so remember to use your guidelines, one pica apart, no empty space in your page, so go all the way to the margins, and then just do some little things like that to tie everything together, and then color code the different pictures like that. Can help make connections. Most people are pretty visual, so they'll see two red boxes and they'll assume probably that there's some connection there. So that's designing a page. We'll probably do another one, just a slightly different format and different way in the next tutorial.